Hey
Well,
everyone, I'm here with Adam, the co-founder of Thatch. Adam, thanks for joining us.
thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about what Thatch does.
Thatch is a new way to do healthcare, where instead of businesses deciding on all of the benefits for their team, which is the way it's worked for the last 80 years, you typically start at a company, your employer says, hey, you get this health insurance plan, this dental insurance plan, this vision plan, and so forth. With Thatch, instead, employers can just give their teams tax-free money, and everybody on the team gets to spend it the way they want. And so if you like a particular insurance company, you can use the money for that insurance company. If you've got costs that are important to you, like therapy or prescription drugs or braces for your kids or whatever it is, you can use the money for that. And so it's just a better, more efficient way to do healthcare.
That's very cool. So how did you come up with this idea?
So my co-founder and I met and initially thought that we would go down a more clinical path. And so we
Okay.
started talking to, the initial idea was actually to help cancer patients find clinical trials. And so we went and talked to a ton of cancer patients, had this idea where they could essentially connect their data and find a clinical trial using it. And they basically told us they weren't super interested in that idea, which was
Yeah.
pretty crushing. We had both lost
Yeah.
parents to cancer. So it was a problem that was like very personal for us.
Yeah.
But 100% of the patients that we talked to told us the biggest problem for them was actually paying for healthcare. And
Interesting.
so it was the experience of dealing with insurance companies, claims that were denied, or bills that came up or whatever. And so we just got really obsessed with this problem of why does paying for healthcare suck? And we kind of went down the path of understanding, the healthcare payment rails, so like the flexible spending account, health savings account, and so forth. And we learned about this new law that passed 5 years ago that introduced a thing called an individual coverage health reimbursement arrangement, or ICHRA,
Okay.
which is like a long, terrible healthcare acronym, but basically is just a mechanism for employers to do this, to give their teams tax-free money. So it's a new way to do healthcare. It sounded amazing. Like it seemed like every company should be doing this. And so we just, went down the path of trying to figure out why they weren't. And it turns out it's just really arduous to administer. And so that's the thing that we built. Thatch is just an easy way for employers to, leverage this new law and give their team money to pay for health.
So that's really interesting. You guys went down a route. You had kind of an idea in mind, and you were able to kind of make this shift. What gave you the confidence that this shift made the most sense?
We actually experienced these problems ourselves.
I see.
And so as we were hiring folks for our team, we picked an insurance, like a one size fits all group insurance plan, which is the typical thing that you do. And everybody on the team hated it. And, we spent all this money on it, and we're trying to do the right thing and give our team like the best possible healthcare coverage. And despite that, we had a remote team. So for the, person that we had in California, his doctor wasn't covered. We had somebody in New
Right.
York whose therapist was now out of network, and so forth. And we, thought that was just crazy. And so when we learned instead, you could just, give your team money and they can pick the insurance plan that their doctor takes, it just seemed like a no-brainer.
Is this the law change kind of the why now? This wasn't even possible before.
Exactly right. Yeah. So, this law passed in 2019, went into effect in 2020. And so it's a new thing that, couldn't have existed before then.
Yeah.
And essentially what we're facilitating is giving people money that they can spend on the individual marketplace, which has been around for about 10 years, since 2014. And the individual marketplace, when it launched, wasn't like, the quality of healthcare wasn't great. And over the years, we've kind of seen like the population in the market grow and the quality of healthcare coverage get better and better. And so now we're kind of at this inflection point where the coverage is typically better than small group health insurance. It's usually more affordable, which is great. And then, like we mentioned, you're just giving choice and flexibility to people, which obviously is always a good thing.
So what's the vision of the company 5 years from now? Everything's working. How do you guys see yourselves?
We want to be the default place that every modern company comes to give their team health benefits. And if you think about it right now, there really isn't a default. And so if you ask, 10 different companies, what do you do for health benefits? You're going to get 10 different answers. And we think that's crazy. This way of doing health benefits just makes more sense. It saves businesses time, it saves them money in most cases, and then it makes their team a lot happier because they get the choice and flexibility. We just want Thatch to be the default place that folks go to make that happen.
So what are the checkpoints or the milestones? Like what's the master plan to make sure that we're heading towards this grand vision?
I mean, I think, in the near term, what we're trying to do is just create a really great product experience. And so Thatch has grown super quickly. We basically spent a year and a half in a hole developing banking partnerships and getting licensed as a health insurance broker in all 50 states and getting licensed as what's called a third-party administrator. So we kind of, spent all this time building the infrastructure. We launched just about a year and a half ago and then have grown super quickly to around 1,000 companies now that use Thatch.
That's awesome.
And so along the way, the thing that we're going to try and do is continue to make the product experience better and better and make, the experience for the end users of our product, which really just employees at companies that are getting their healthcare through Thatch, is compelling as we can, so that, over time, it seems like, it's hard to imagine a company wouldn't do healthcare this way.
Right. So it's interesting to me because you guys had to do a lot of regulatory hurdles before you could actually produce a product. Totally. Was how did you make sure that there wasn't market risk, or did you guys just have enough confidence that this was going to work and it was okay to invest that time?
We just had conviction that this made sense. And, one of the things that we did was I put together, working prototype. And then my co-founder and I went out and met with a ton of companies and showed them the product that we were building and said, this is the way it works. You come in, you set a budget, you connect your bank account, you connect your payroll system, everybody comes and gets their insurance on Thatch. Would you use this? It's universally people said, switch today. I'll do that.
That's awesome. Right.
And so, even though the investment to actually build this was pretty high and it took a long time, we knew that we had product market fit just based on the conversations we had up front.
That's really awesome. So what's your pitch to a candidate joining your company? Why is Thatch a great place to work?
There are a couple of things that I talk about. One, from the very beginning, we've optimized for hiring people who are just absolutely phenomenal. And so we have early employees, some of the very best folks from companies like Stripe and Shopify and Ramp and Rippling and Robinhood and so forth. And so we have a lot of talent density. There's 59 people here. Obviously, I'm very biased, but I think, talent density at Thatch is greater than anywhere else I've seen at our stage. But beyond just people that are good at what they do, they're also some of the kindest, nicest, loveliest human beings imaginable. And so I think when you do that from the beginning, then you've got this compounding advantage where it's we've got great people and the best people want to work with great people. And so my pitch is usually, hey, come work with some of the best people in the world. And then the second component is, it's an opportunity to come work on a mission that I think really matters. Healthcare in the US is deeply broken. And, I see my life mission as trying to drag all the smart people I can into healthcare to try and fix it. And so my pitch is basically, work with great people and, hey, the system is really broken. You can take what you learned at Stripe or Shopify or whatever and apply it to a domain that's seen very little innovation and badly needs help. And it's an opportunity to impact the lives of, millions of American families.
It's interesting. The really strong team piece is there's also this kind of chicken egg problem where it's okay, you won't have a strong team until you hire your first people, and then you have to make sure that keeps going. What was the initial pitch to those early people? Was it the strength of this mission of healthcare is broken and we got to fix it? Why leave your very cushy, nice, great job at a prestigious place and join a startup that's pretty uncertain?
That's a great question. Early on, quite honestly, it was just the network. And so both my co-founder and I put a lot of effort into trying to build a really great reputation where we were before. And so we were able to kind of go out to our network and say, hey, we're doing something that we think really matters. And so it was partially about the mission, but I think great people want to follow other great people that they want to work with. And so early on, it was just taking people from our network. And then again, that's a thing that compounded over time.
How have you found, and that makes total sense, how have you found the change for some people going from kind of bigger companies to something that's so early stage for you guys? I guess you're a little bit later now, but definitely more risk for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of risk. I think, I was just actually this morning asking folks on the team, hey, what's something that you really appreciate about working at Thatch? And I would say the most common answer I get is autonomy and agency. And so, whether you're coming from a big company or a small company, you like the idea of, being given this really big, juicy, if you're great at what you do, you like the idea of being given this huge juicy problem, and then given the resources and the creative latitude to go execute on it. And so for everybody that we had that came from large companies, I think it was really attractive to come work with great people on a big mission, but also to have the agency to come in and like really own something and make it happen.
Yeah, I remember we had a designer that like worked at like I think it was like Meta, and she owned like a little box on their homepage or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's billions of people see it, but like it's a box, right? And she owned an entire feature set over here, or product line, so completely different. So talk to me. I love this agency autonomy thing. I'd love to kind of use that to dive into your company culture. Like, what do you guys value? What's important? How do you think about what makes Thatch work and work well?
I think it's a combination of things. Chris, my amazing co-founder, and I have been really intentional about culture from day one. And so, even probably before we had our first employees, we were writing down operating principles and we were thinking about what are the core values of the company. I think the things that I would say define Thatch are, one, resourcefulness and a bias for action. So there's a great Paul Graham essay called Relentlessly Resourceful. And I think that's a thing that we've also really optimized for and looked for from the very beginning. So we have an incredibly resourceful team. I would also say just like a very high velocity team. So we've optimized for velocity from the start. And there are a lot of great modern companies like Stripe or Ramp kind of did the same thing, like really focused on velocity. And I think that served us really well and allowed us to move quickly through different ideas until we found that worked and had product market fit. And maybe, if I were to give one more, I would say care. Like the people at the company just really care very deeply about each other and care about the mission that they're solving. And, that combination of resourcefulness and, velocity and just deep caring about what they do is like been really powerful for us and probably defines the culture that we still have today.
So you guys were really thoughtful about this. Why those particular ones? Like, is that something that you care about? Is that something that you've seen work well? Like, where did these come from?
I think so. Yeah, they're definitely things that I care about just personally. But my background, basically, I did 6 years in healthcare. I started and sold some different bootstrap software companies. And then one of those landed me at Stripe. So I joined Stripe when it was 100 and some people, because I was actually a Stripe user for one of the companies that I had started and loved the product and the company and the culture there. And so it brought me there. I think that gave me a real appreciation for like bias for action and resourcefulness. You just kind of, when you're running, especially a bootstrapped company and you don't have a lot of resources, you just like, you have to get it done. There are no excuses. You just have to like go and execute. And same thing with velocity. I think like you either execute quickly or you die, especially with a bootstrapped company where you're not raising capital and you really don't have the time to kind of like sit and think and hire a team and do all of those kind of things. You just have to, I was investing my personal money and trying to make something work. And fortunately it was able to. And then I think, like I had also mentioned caring, like, I think that's just innate to who I am, who my co-founder is. The people on the team are just, people that are extremely high ownership and really care about the work they do, which again, I would say every exceptional person that I know just cares a whole lot and, really wants to build something great.
What are you trading off? Like some of these things come with saying no to other things. Are there specific things that you guys are like, okay, we're not going to have this, or we're okay with letting these things drop while these other things are more important? Or do you feel like that's not fair as like a question?
No, I think that's a good question. I think it's a fair question. I would say the thing that we're trading off is we've really optimized for hiring happy, friendly people. And sometimes that's meant, we interview candidates who are like clearly very good at what they do, but maybe less pleasant to work with. And, I think that's a choice that different companies make. And some companies, a lot of companies just say, we want the very best people. And yeah, sometimes they're going to be prickly or difficult to work with or whatever. And that's okay with us because like we're building a culture that's, whatever, more supportive of that sort of personality. We're not. And so I think that's a thing that we've traded off. And I'm a big believer still that the very, very best people are also pretty much universally nice people. But, that has been a trade-off. It's like we've had great candidates that we've decided, they're probably not a fit for the culture that we're building.
How do you think about being friendly, but also kind of keeping the quality bar high? Like at some point, someone's not going to fit within the culture, and you want to be nice, but you also you got to realize that we're a team, and maybe you'll find a better fit somewhere else. Like, does that play into the equation at all?
I think so. I mean, we if it's not a fit, we're not doing anybody any favors.
Right.
And so, I would say like we have had a few folks that we weren't the right stage of company for them. And so the thing you don't want to do is just, for the sake of kindness or something like that, try and keep them around, because I actually don't think that's the kind thing. I think the kind of thing is to try and get people to where they belong and where they're going to find fulfillment in the work that they do.
Can you walk me through what a day-to-day looks like, or specifically how does an idea go from where does an idea come from, and how does an idea go from an idea to actual production code?
Sure. I mean, I would say all of our ideas come from customers. And so we just spend a lot of time talking with current and potential customers. And, for the business that we're running, we also have a lot of different stakeholders. So we have employers and HR people, but we also have employees at the company are actually our end user. We work with a bunch of insurance carriers. And so those are folks that we're talking to every day. And then finally, we also work with payroll partners and, HRIS platforms. And so, the ideas that we have typically come from talking to them and understanding what they want. And then, we pretty quickly try and think about what's the most interesting version of this that we could build. And then, back to the earlier point on velocity, we go about building something, as quickly as we can to try and show value and prove out that idea. And, if it's something that, feels like it has legs, then we double down, we invest in it. And, right now we're actually hiring a team around one of those ideas. And so we're looking for a business lead, and we're putting a couple engineers on something because, we found through talking with health insurance carriers that there's a lot of infrastructure that we could build that's really valuable to them.
So what does that velocity really look like? Is it just a really small team executing maybe a prototype level thing, and then it's okay, this works, let's really double down? Or how does that work?
Yeah. Sometimes it is. One thing that's hard about healthcare is it's more difficult to just have an MVP. You're dealing with people's health and wellness and, insurance enrollments and all of those kind of things. But in some cases it is exactly that. We're building, kind of a light prototype to show value, I would say. And then before we're releasing a real product to a human being that's, going to the doctor's office or whatever, that's when we do more scoping and build something that's more robust, because we can't just put a, barely working product out there for that audience.
That makes sense. You've had quite a career. You've worked at Stripe, you've bootstrapped companies. You've now started another one that's growing really, really quickly. What do you think you've learned that you're bringing into this experience that people might not be that might be surprising to people?
I think, both my co-founder and I, and also our chief legal officer, was the second employee at a company called Brex and was the second lawyer at Stripe before that. We talk all the time about the fact that we want to build the best place that anybody here has ever worked. So we want every employee at Thatch to be able to say, this is the best job I've ever had. This is the best place that I've ever worked. I think that's a thing I at least don't hear other founders talking about. And maybe that is, I'm sure that is a thing that some other founders care about, but I think that's kind of unintuitive. But when you do that, you become a talent magnet. And I think, but back to where we started the conversation, I think the single most important thing that we do is hire really exceptional people. And you do that by building a really great place for them to work. So that's the thing that, Stripe was just a fantastic place to work, both in terms of learning and working with really kind coworkers and, being around really great talent and working on something that matters and so forth. And so that's a, ethos that I've tried to bring into here is build a great place to work, and everything kind of cascades from there.
What's one or two concrete things that help me kind of fill that in? What does that look like?
I think we talked about like just a culture of kindness and thoughtfulness is the thing that we've really optimized for. We also tend to give folks bigger, meatier projects to work on, and just give them the resources that they need to be successful. We have a very high trust culture. It's another thing that I hear a lot from the team that they really appreciate. And so that's what it looks like. Is we have an idea, we bring one of our really smart employees into the fold, say, hey, this is the thing that we think could be really exciting. Go figure it out. And so far, that's worked very well for us.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Adam. Thatch sounds awesome to work. And if people want to learn more about Thatch, where should they go?
They can find us at thatch.ai/jobs, or they can email me. I'm just adam@thatch.ai.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks very much.